we just better let the report sit down, please. Okay, guys, welcome to the start to the and visitors to the last meeting of the year. Health and safety exits as you know where they are. You've got two alternatives. If we have an earthquake, you either use the exits or put your head between your legs and kiss the proverbial goodbye. So I suggest you take the first one. Right, I'll start off with apologies. We have one from Ross.
And from Lee. Lee's not part of the team. No, sorry.
Yeah, no. And we've got Rebecca on Zoom. So would someone like to move that we accept the apologies? Alistair, second. Right, do we have any conflicts of interest? No, good. Public participation, we have public from water here that will block in C1. And I'm going to give us a verbal update. Yeah, we're going to move from C4 to C1. We're happy with that? No extraordinary. We first have minutes for confirmation. Would someone like to move that we receive these minutes? And Garrett.
I got that was a yes.
What do you feel? What's the invoice over? All right. And sorry, they need to be true. Do we have any discussion around the minutes? Previous meeting? Right. We are now moving on to decision reports, which is B1. It's the draft roading activity management plan. And I do need to congratulate the team for the effort I put into this. I got some work done on it. So thanks, guys. Very well done. Now you're up to you, mate.
So believe it or not, I won't talk through the whole document because it's quite pretty lengthy, and we have Tim here to answer any particular questions. I guess at a high level, we just as the chair said, commend the team for developing the plan. It's obviously a plan that needs to go to Waka Kotahi, NZTA, for approval as part of the funding application. And yeah, there's quite a substantial amount of work gone into it. It's also been peer reviewed across the region as well, and received some positive feedback for it. And it is obviously at a high level in terms of longer term strategy, and this will plug into the LTP and infrastructure strategy as well. Bearing in mind there are a few pages of it there. Were there any particular questions?
It's page 126, line 2.
Okay, so and I guess one of the things we have found that other councils have presented their AMPs, they have had almost endorsement and support from council before they've been submitted. So maybe that's a bit of a learning for us to make sure we get that first. But at this stage we do have some time to receive any feedback or thoughts from many members around some of the content of it. So if there are any particular questions or comments or queries, keen to get those.
I think you need to bear in mind that this is a draft plan, and it takes a bit of time to digest. So many pages, Alyssa, and line 21 isn't on there. But I think, because this plan will go into the LTP, and we can expect feedback via there, and of course it gives us time to actually have a look and make our own comments. So I guess that's what you're driving at, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of submission to NZTA, the draft was submitted on Friday dawn, I think, but it is still in that draft format. Tim, when's the final to
Early next year.
So there is still the time, I'm aware there probably wasn't enough time for the members to review in level of detail, but yeah, keen to.
As you mentioned, it has been peer reviewed by other councils and we were rated pretty highly, weren't we?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess, as you said, we missed out on the #1 spot because we didn't have as many pretty pictures of them. I think, you know, when you look, to be perfectly honest, I haven't completely read the whole document. But I guess, you know, those summer lazy days, we might sit back and have another read, but please go through it because it's Alistair.
Yeah, just got a couple of questions, and Tim, probably you're the best one to answer these ones. The 40% increase to 3 years across the contract rates, that seems extremely high, 3 years. Is that,
Works the market.
so what's driving that?
Historically, the councils have been heavily subsidised with road maintenance contracts. The market driven those well underground. It's the means to have that volume of work that you're aware of. At this stage across the country, the contractors said enough's enough. The tenders will be a true reflection of the actual cost. And on top of that, we're seeing regional council that sort of monitoring on gravel extraction. Gravel rates have gone up 30% in the last 2 or 3 months just due to that, and as you increase that roading, one of the key principles of the roading is aggregate. And having a tender to replace, we haven't attracted those rate increases the contractor has. So it's just enough. And health and safety is a big driver. We've had a 70%, 80% increase in a day rate due to health and safety compliance. So that's driving that.
Traffic management, being high on the list.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the same time that's happening, we're going from 27 years down to 20 years, and what's the implication going to be on that for us for going forward? Is that smart economics at the moment, or?
Well, your 27 years is probably the highest in the country.
Yeah.
Longest, so we don't see massive deterioration overnight, so it's a long game. That deterioration might happen in 5 years' time, and that will increase our needs for maintenance. So if we intervene that correctly, we can reduce those long-term maintenance costs.
So we're effectively increasing our maintenance cost by about a third by doing that, aren't we?
We're increasing our CapEx by reducing the resale lot.
By about a third, yeah? Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's a long game too. We won't do it in 1 year, we'll do it in 3 plus probably 3 years to get down.
So what's the implications financially on this then for us going forward if we're going to increase that side? And I know you can't ask that, but I'm sure our CFO could probably have a comment on this.
That will be part of our discussions tomorrow in the workshop, but we do see will be increased costs. The CapEx is mainly funded through depreciation reserves. So we've got enough within our depreciation reserves to cover what Tim has indicated.
So is our renewal capital or is it maintenance? Is it operation?
Possibly just to comment on that, I think we had a history of sweating our assets, as Mr. Wilson has mentioned before. So I think it's a good thing to be doing this because $1 spent in preventative maintenance is worth $3 in renewal.
Oh, I'm not debating the rights or wrongs of it, just the implications of it. On customer satisfaction, is there a likelihood that we will combine in that survey with Carterton, even though we had different, we may have different measures or different thresholds, but certainly there's cost efficiency, given that we have Rimahanga Roads as one unit.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. There's as part of the Rimahanga Roads project, I guess, the team have been coming together on a number of things, and that's one of the things with the settlement. And we need to, one of the things we're trying to do is look to align our KPIs to make sure that reporting is easier and just more efficiency for the guys around that as well.
I guess the bit that was pretty hard to put into this document, government changes, they're going to be chucked at us from time to time. And we're going to be nimble enough that we can adapt to them. This race is not easy, but it's a bit of the unknown. So all in all, I as I said before, I think it's a great document. It's a great start. It's the level of this we haven't had before. As I said before, thanks again, team. But first I need someone to move that we've received the draft roading activity management plan report. Alison will second that. And number two, I need someone to move, consider the activity management plan and provide strategic feedback for consideration.
So again, we can receive more feedback as people get a chance to read them.
So this is a bit of an open book really, isn't it?
Yeah, and then there will be a time where we need to submit a final plan,
Yes.
and we can let you know when that is.
So, Mr. Chair, can I make a comment that, this is 124 pages long and our annual plan and our strategic plan is sort of about the same length and we have lots of workshops on those. This is a really detailed thing and I think we probably need to actually have a dedicated workshop to go through this. That's very complicated, very technical, and I'm sure Tim would love to spend a day taking us through it. He's smiling, look at him smiling.
Yeah, a big comment, but as I said before, it is a big document. We need time to digest it ourselves.
But I'd certainly like to have a bit of a committee workshop on it so that we can understand it.
Presumably Marston and Carter are asking the same questions.
I would imagine.
So this is the combined plan.
Yeah. So
What do we do?
Isolation, or do we with them?
Do they have an assets and services committee?
I think they have a comparable one. I can't remember what it's called. I'm not sure of their intention to put it up through those committees, but certainly we're keen to give visibility of it to.
Can we check with them and perhaps do a combined one?
Some knowledge on that. They have, haven't they, Tom?
Have they submitted it to that yet? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. Senior management have got it.
Well, it would make sense to have a combined sort of workshop on it to go through it.
It could be quite ungainly if we're starting to look at specifics within the South Wairarapa, which is 3 times bigger than Kāorere.
I think we should have our own.
I think our own.
I think it should, and I think just basically just understanding the asset management plan, it's the safety stuff in here is something that we need to put a focus on. Because the other piece of work that's buried into here is the Road to Zero implementation work. And that's a specific part of the program we're doing in the next 3 years, and it has safety improvements, literally physical safety improvements, but also has the work that NZTA are contemplating around State Highway 2, but also speed limits. So you need to get an understanding of that, because you will be in this period being asked to make some decisions around particularly setting speed limits, level of safety improvements, and those kinds of things. And that's at least a couple of months in itself to some extent.
So what's the time frame on this then?
It's happening as we speak.
First of all, this is a draft. When
Signing up a joint contract for our own speed management review of the back of the State Highway 2 stuff. So I'll be saying we need something around February on this.
Could, if not working with one of our LTP.
I thought I'd do it back to back with assets and services. Just a workshop, around that time. But we need to pull it out specifically. But the only comments I'd make in terms of the LTP application. So first of all, what Tim submits to NZTA, and by the way, can I say, and being NZTA and compared to being these, this is actually really, really good. If I was an NZTA, I'd be very happy with this document as the basis for the bid. But the key thing, the first step that the NZTA does is look at your LTP and say, are you putting your local share in to match this? So the quickest way to not get the funding from NZTA is to reduce the the LGP, the funding the town is looking for. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically. You put a bit in, if you reduce it, then the FTA will look at the reduced amount and only match what you're putting in the LGP. And so it's important you guys do fully support the investment priorities of Tim's Point. That's probably the most critical thing. The second is that you've got again, very significant, they've been, what year does the fire rate reduce?
24.
24, and that, so you've currently got 53%, 53% fire for the next 2 years, right? So there is sense in making sure that you are, because you're getting essentially more money from the FTA in these 2 years, 3 years, then so basically this is the best time to invest in their way of life. But that's a discussion you'll have with the LG people, just those are the parameters to bear in mind.
Okay, now, Alex did move that we consider the activity management plan and provide strategic feedback for consideration.
Could I amend that following a workshop TBA?
Just need to be slightly careful around the workshop and timing with any impact around the LTP budgets, and then we'll do quickly enough, whether we actually need to have a separate workshop apart from licensing services. Because we need to make sure that any changes to this, of course, then flows through to finances and to give also time to.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I don't think we can provide strategic input without it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was saying that the workshop probably needs to be separate from assets and services. The next meeting for assets and services, I think, is mid-March.
Yep.
So we probably need to have it separate to that.
But we need it before mid-March.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking January or something, or whenever we manage to get together informally and run through it all.
Well, just rather than get us all in the game, that's why I suggest we try and piggyback on an LTP booking.
Yep.
We're happy with that, or just that these guys want to get a date. And I'll second that. Right, we're doing well, guys. We're moving on to information, federal reports from Chief Executive of Staff, and as I mentioned before, we have Wellington Water here. So we'll try you guys in first up, please. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All set to go?
Yeah, well, any questions you've got, really? You've got the materials. I also quite Mark see.
Yeah, we've got Mark Woodhead to the head of PMO, the programme.
Everyone,
Hello, Mark. Right.
Mark's leading the project team.
Yep, we've met Mark here before, haven't we? Have we?
Yes.
Oh,
I don't think so.
okay. Right, well, is there any update that you'd like to give us and then we can comment on it?
Yes, the manganese reduction plant has, I guess, finished construction. It's ready to start. We're not in a position to start it at the moment due to impacts on operations. However, we could start it in an emergency if we needed to. The other projects, there's been some delays due to the compounding effect of the fourth bore at Waihingi, the availability of contractors due to delays that we had with the power at the site. There was delays which has had a compounding effect on the others. But we are confident that we can meet supply for normal supply, although that might be result in some restrictions for outdoor irrigation.
Yep. I guess we're a little bit fortunate this year that it has been a late spring, and you haven't had the pressure put on the water supply like last year. And I guess, you know, we're thankful that 12 months ago, your brief was to get the water up and running and you got it awarded and you're pretty well there. So for that, we thank you. I guess we've got other issues arriving.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said before, you know, the potable water is the most important thing for us in the South Wairarapa, and then we can move on to others. But I guess, you know, as councillors, we always look at the bad side of things, and as you've gone through, you've found problems that we never knew about, and hopefully you got that under control. But just see what the year brings us.
Yeah, I think the manganese reduction plant's a good example. You know, we start with a project that didn't have a very wide scope, I guess you could say, and then when working on that, we've uncovered further things that'll lead to more delays, and that has a compounding effect on the operational side. You know, there's at this point there's very little redundancy in the system, so in order to keep the operations running and to guarantee the supply of safe water, we've got finite resources to commission the plants, and as we find these things, it has a compounding effect. So yeah, but yeah, I mean the fact that we've got safe water, you know, is I guess a big step forward. Very pleased with that. Yeah.
I think that's the understatement of the year.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is really pleasing for the team, you know, that we've been able to make such a noticeable difference here. So yeah.
So you've got, last year we were relying on Soldiers Memorial because we had turbulence in the Waiahini bores and also delays in commissioning the additional bores that were being put in. So we've got 3 bores now working at the Waiahini treatment plant and 1 waiting to be commissioned.
That's right.
And how are they operating at the moment in comparison with last year?
I believe if they're starting and stopping, and we have low rivers, we can experience turbidity issues. So yeah, we're watching it closely. So yeah.
So there's
I mean, that is partly to do with some of the delays that we do not want to create that disruption in the supply, because it has it could potentially have an effect where we end up in shortage because the plant can't be restarted easily. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Yeah.
But we're looking a lot better than we were last year, where we had problem after problem, you know, with
Well, I think
supply.
we've got the experience now where we can manage it, and I guess we can preemptively try and avoid some of the issues that we've seen. But in saying that, you know, when the river goes low, those turbidity issues will reoccur. And yeah, the problem with bringing that 4th bore on is that we don't know what issues that we'll have there, and then when it comes back online, if we do have those turbidity issues, they take a lot of time to recover from, and it has a compounding effect on Featherston and Great Eastern.
But in the interim, we would have Soldiers Memorial, which is now compliant.
That's right.
And at a different level.
Yes.
Less turbidity.
Yes, so it doesn't have full protozoal compliance until it has the filtration up and running, but it's got 3 barriers to contamination, which is a major step forward.
Have we inspected the lines from the Waiahini down to Featherston? Last year we had a slip, of course, which cut off supply, and what work have we done to make sure that the pipes to Featherston have been
So yeah, at the moment we're looking at the the spare parallel line. So that's what we'll be utilising should we have that problem again. So yeah, there's a wider program looking at that. And there's a number of risks throughout the system that we're uncovering like that. So it's just a matter of time as we go through the list of critical assets and prioritise, you know, those risks like that. Come up with a plan to mitigate them.
And the other question I had was, do we have a backup power supply for the manganese reduction plant should we have a power cut in that area?
I believe the backup power supplies that we used on the Waiahini plant on the weekend would be able to be used there.
Cool. Thank you.
I think that was a pretty good example. Also, you know, what would have been a major drama, I guess, last Friday when we lost power there, that, you know, that improvements council have been able to, you know, fund generators and things like that we have available, just make a real big difference to the resilience of the system. So
Leak detection, I guess you're really onto it, so in a word with this, what percentage of the leaks do you think you've identified?
I'm sorry, I don't have that data on me, but I can come back to you with what we think.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see how that's been.
Yeah, and we know the usage in Greytown is high, but as it says in the report, we've identified 29 leaks. Will help address that.
Yeah.
So just on that, the last report we got on this said that we were losing 50% of the water that
62 or something.
whatever it was.
Huge also can do further analysis of leaks on repair, we can do some step testing, I think is the phrase, and we can understand that a bit better and actually then take remedial action from there again.
So obviously my question is, if we repair those 29 leaks, and I'll come to the 10 on private networks, but if we repair those, then our demand will drop considerably because we've been wasting 60% of our water. So, so that will take a lot of pressure off the system.
Yeah, well, it should do. I mean, it's not a perfect science, the leak detection. I mean, we use a range of methods, but it would have identified a large percentage of the leaks, I imagine. So we should see a reduction. It won't reach zero, but it should see an improvement. Yeah.
I think
Anything less than 62% is good.
So I think
Yeah, I guess that the context in relatively small towns like we have in South Wairarapa is that one or two leaks can equal a large percentage.
Yeah.
So it's when you've got a large metropolitan area, a couple of leaks is
Well, and that's the point too, if we're looking at water restrictions, but we're just flushing 50% of the water we're producing down to the ground.
Yes, it's not us. I mean, from my perspective, my team are operating the treatment plants and struggle to keep up with demand, and it creates a lot of headaches for us. So the sooner we can get on top of the leaks, the easier my life is. So no one feels it more than us.
That's why we want to prioritise that leak detection.
Yeah.
So Ewan, what can we do about these 10 that are on private networks? What enforcement do we have to say, get it fixed before summer?
they'll be charged.
Yeah, we don't have any bylaws. Yes, Rebecca asked this question before, unless there's a public health risk. So it really is, it's your charging regime that is your lever to encourage people to.
But we don't have a punitive charging regime that says you've been identified with a leak, fix it, or we're going to charge you an extra fine or whatever.
We can't literally jump across the fence and turn it off.
But the fines will be going into the thousands of dollars, well over the cost of repairing if they don't repair it. So they'd be foolish not to.
I mean, we have notified them of those things.
Remember the next, by next year, again, subject to the LTP, that we do, actually as part of the fiscal package, it's not the PG, it's to do smart meter testing. And that's to help really identify the public-private split of leakage, because we detect, it's not a perfect science, not science, but having a good spread of water meters inside Greytown specifically is really good. Will give us much more granular information than we have now.
So I'm not sorry to harp on about this, but if we've got 10 water leaks on private, are they significant water leaks? Obviously they've been identified, so they'll be significant. Are we talking contractors doing it, or are we talking drain layers or plumbers? So the big difference in amount of work required. And then you've got the question of fixing the other 29 leaks on public land. So how are these private people going to get contractors to fix them? So is there a means by which we could do this for them and charge them on their rates or whatever? Because obviously there's a cost to us to keep pumping water.
We can't answer that question. I'm not methodology.
But, we need to somehow we need to get this fixed because there's a cost to us as well, and there's a cost to them. So
the cost of council is recovered through the water levy. On
Look, I understand that, but it's still there's still a cost to us of cash out. There's maintenance, wear and tear on equipment, all this thing that if we don't get these leaks fixed as quickly as possible.
So on the public side, we're totally in control of that. We don't have a lot of women to history, I presume that would have been informed.
Yeah, so-
And we don't know how responsive that rate is, so if we find 90% of people are fixing them there. And then there is no council intervention unless it's a major leak, if someone's refusing to do it. So we just need to understand what the scale of the response is. We just don't get people know.
It usually is the minority of people that let it carry on leaking, it's, the majority of people are good, get it fixed, and it's a matter of getting a private plumber in to fix the majority of them, and they do that.
But if you go back to prior to when we put in the water meters,
No one would have ever known. They wouldn't have ever known unless the lake had been.
that was the problem, and the council took the view, when the meters went in, we knew what was being used, we could estimate what was being wasted. It was an advantage to us to identify where the leaks were, and in most of the cases, the private owners didn't know they had leaks. And, you know, we didn't go out and charge them because they had these leaks. Was, as I say, a huge advantage to council to know that where the leaks were, it was to save it that way, so.
In the South Wairarapa, it was mentioned in the Wellington Water Committee that we are being used as a trial. Could you give us a bit more information on that?
So we're putting in the smart meters as a trial to see how, I guess, the public responds to things like being notified by water use, and whether they do, I guess, you know, with the knowledge of their water use, understanding of what they're doing, change their behaviour.
And that's in Greytown.
Yes.
And how many smart meters are being?
I'm not sure whether they've got into that detail yet. Yeah, it's basically it's a concept.
Lovely.
Is that happened or is it about to happen?
About to happen.
Yeah, so as part of the water reform stimulus funding, set some money aside to do a bit of a trial.
That's actually a trial for the whole Wellington region too. So.
There's aspects of the building that they get integrated. As a key piece of the feedback from the plan, as actually give people information to self-manage. And I guess, you know, the manual type meters that we have over here at the moment, people don't know about their leaks until their meter's read a year later. So if someone gets a notification that, you know, you've used, you know, a month's water in a week, then they might start taking a look, especially when they're paying for it.
Sorry, I'll go back over. So the bores pumps in Memorial Park are now all up and running?
In Memorial Park,
Yeah, because we had,
the Memorial Park bore has always been running.
well, there's a note here, it's about replacing bore pump, the new filter.
Oh, right. So the bore pump, there's a really antiquated bit of kit there. And so we're looking at putting a replacement one, and that can be controlled off a variable speed drive, which will enable us to better be able to control the turbidity and things like that on startup. So but that hasn't happened yet. That's part of, there was a stage 2 and 3 for that project, and we're looking at combining that project into, so the third stage into one stage in order to avoid some sunk costs. That approach has meant a bit of a delay, but significant financial savings for councils.
So it was flagged as November, so it's going to go out for next year.
I think we're looking at April. But yeah, I think it was a significant, like $200,000 savings by that approach. So
That's
anyone
fine.
else worry?
Yeah. That's okay.
We like savings.
Yeah, so it's like, spend it elsewhere.
Dan, you had a question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, you talk about the number of leaks that are in Greytown, but there's no mention of the number that were in Marlborough and Featherston. Do we have an indication of what the level of leaks are in those townships?
So that's still a work in progress. We're still doing this leak detection, and we'll be able to report back from there.
I think didn't I see a report where we just haven't compiled the data that the project's actually begun? And,
It's done.
There was a note email to you guys.
Yeah.
This week. That's right. The process. But I mean, the important thing here is that quite rightly in the past years we've asked the public to manage demand. And this time we're getting ahead of the game by actually making sure we're doing our bit really clearly to actually manage the leaks. So we can then, if we get into a shortage situation, you know, it's on balance for getting the right response.
Can we move on to wastewater?
Yes.
Quick question, hang on, guys.
Yes.
I'm sitting quietly at the back of the room here. I just wanted to ask about what the contamination risk that was identified with the manganese reduction plant. What was it?
So there's some buried air valves that we found, and some equipment that wasn't in the drawings for the farmers' supply, the tank. And I guess under the current operating regime with the head of the existing reservoirs providing head back, it wasn't such a high risk. But when we commission the manganese reduction plant and bring that plant back online, that head is lost, and so that elevated the risk of that contamination, which is why once we identified it, we needed to act promptly and remove that risk.
Okay. I just wanted to explore that a little bit further in the context of what extra equipment do you guys actually need, or do we need to be looking to purchase to change those valves or change the system in that space?
Linda's here at the moment, we can probably talk to that, but I believe we're doing that actually today. So it's we can't bring that plant on until the risk is mitigated, but that's it.
So the cost associated with fixing that, that's all.
So a non-return valve is being installed today at the plant, and that cost is being absorbed through the program. So we're looking to find the additional spend to cover that.
So nothing additional that we need to approve in that space. Okay. Cool. All right.
Actually, it's not the plant itself, it's the pipe that can help operate. So turn this on, you change the flows, it pops out different issues in terms of the way that the pipe works. That's essentially what we're fixing.
Good. Right, we shall move on to wastewater. Is there any issues?
So with the summer holidays about to start, Lake Ferry is obviously going to get a big increase of people going down there. Is that wastewater treatment plant going to be able to cope given the damage that's been done?
Well, currently at the moment, we're using the part of the consent that allows us to discharge without using the full drip line. So as far as volume is concerned, that approach can continue. And we're looking at the options, and we'll be bringing that back to the committee when we have it.
So that's what you're saying is the capacity there to accept the increased population over the summer.
That's right, yeah, the population.
Thank you.
Right. Carrie, have you anything you would like to bring up?
On wetwood,
Yeah. Clear the white people.
sorry?
Yeah, it's just, I guess we're going to do a bit of an update around community feedback from the process. So whether Linda, you want to do that now?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm happy to kick it off. Away you go.
Yep. So since we last met, we've had our community feedback session at the Garrison in Featherston. So we had around 30 or so people attend that. What was really interesting there is the people who came stayed for a long time, so they were highly engaged and having a lot of conversations about the options, the proposals, the ideas that we had. And then from that, we did we took the material to the libraries in Greytown and Martinborough as well. I was a little surprised that didn't generate more feedback. We only had one email come through from those sessions. So I've had a chat to the librarians, and for those in conversation, nothing sort of formal has come through from that. The key themes that have come through were certainly in Featherston, the desire for water not to be discharged to the waterways, wastewater to be discharged unless it's at an incredibly high standard. That they don't want cost to be a top criteria to be assessing against. They would rather spend the money to get the high level treatment and spread that cost over a longer period of time. Suggestions coming through about selling on a farm or the golf course to help fund the solution, depending on what the solution is, of course. And that we're focusing on growth, looking at alternative and innovative solutions. A few comments came through about using plants and natural systems to absorb the nutrients, and respecting the principles of Te Mano Tuai. So that's sort of the key themes that came through. I wouldn't say that it was new information from our very first workshop, but it's sort of reinforcing the local community's perspective on what they want to see.
There is a workshop scheduled for the Maori Standing Committee in Featherston. When is it? I guess the idea was to get the Maori world view on that, what they wanted and what was acceptable. So out of that, I guess you'll probably get a different level of feedback. Yeah. And you'll be there?
I think it's, and the Maori Standing Committee are keen to have their own discussion around it.
Yeah, but don't they need people with a bit of a knowledge?
I guess it's more around the principles.
Yeah.
Really around providing that view into rather than specific technical details.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the issue was raised in Maori Standing is basically we wanted to get the Maori perspective and the cultural perspective on what was acceptable, and then look at the solution which would deliver that. Yeah. And I think a number of us would actually really like to sit down quietly and find out exactly what the cultural acceptable position is, whether there are a certain room to move, and the sort of the discharge that's coming through and what would be required from that. And certainly in terms of beneficial reuse, there's a considerable debate there on quality and what it should be.
I'm wondering as well, because we went to the Warapa Moana governance group yesterday, and with the two iwi and the two treaty settlement, whether or not they should be starting to have some input into this as well, given that the Moana is either via land or waterways the recipient of the outflow.
And iwi are engaged in an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Around that.
Yeah, but to what level? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the workshop is not just members of the Maori Standing Committee, but are looking to engage the wider community in that workshop.
Right. Wow, if there's no more questions for Wellington Water, thank you very much for the update.
We're doing the upgrades to the 250 mil pipe to flow into the Martinborough wastewater treatment at the moment. The comments made in one of the reports that it is reaching capacity, the wastewater treatment plant in Martinborough. Do we have any indication of when that we can then say this is actually at capacity and there's no more?
I'll find that out for you. Right.
Yeah, because that's a concern from a timeline perspective on when we need to be reacting, especially from an LTP perspective. We shouldn't be rezoning if we are only 1 year away from capacity. But we should certainly be taking that into account.
Yeah.
So that was more of a bit of a concern for me seeing that pop up. So, that's in, what page is that? Pinot Grove update, page 14.
So there are planned upgrades to the plant to deal with.
To factor in growth,
Yeah.
but it is nearing capacity. Yeah.
Yeah, and those upgrades are scheduled.
But we just need to know what those planned upgrades are, what the capacity increase will be versus what we may be planning to rezone.
We can provide a profile.
Can we add Papua into that as well? The same concern with the new pipeline going through.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, can you add Papua to that in terms of volume? In that comment here, looking at capacity accessible up to 10-20% increase in population of greater. My concern would be if we actually can handle that amount of volume, what's going to happen at the ponds? Can the ponds handle that volume?
Yeah, I'll find that out, but my understanding is there is a bit of headroom here in Greytown, so, but yeah, I'll come back to you.
it may be the deposit, maybe the discharge, but yeah, it'd be interesting. Thank you.
Could, if you come back with that information, if you can flick it all to you and he can copy us in on it, it'd be an action, yeah.
Okay.
Available.
Can I ask, with the wastewater treatment plant, the valve automation that you're doing there, is that having an effect on the start date for the manganese reduction plant? Is it understood to talk to one another?
No. So the manganese, so the valve for the wastewater treatment plant, that is waiting for contractor availability and the equipment to arrive. Actually, I believe the equipment has arrived, so it's waiting for contractor availability. What is having an impact is the compounding effect of the same contractors. So GBE, I think it is, required multiple jobs. So there's a bit of an impact there, but not on operations themselves. No.
So are we looking for both around that February timeframe then?
Yes, I believe it's around that time. For the manganese production plant, we'll probably be looking at before February. Yeah, January.
Yeah, so early to mid-January, we're looking to be able to start the MRP, subject to operations availability.
And the wastewater valve, I think.
Thank you.
Alison,
That comment about contractor workload and availability of contractors sort of raises alarm bells, I think, given the Three Waters money we've just been received and needs to be spent by such and such a time, isn't it?
31st of March 2021, 2022, sorry.
So if we're already
Yeah, this is more to do with the fact that the contractor was already assigned that job and they've been assigned another jobs and there's been slippage of those jobs, which has had a compounding effect. It's not overall, we've got contractors that could come and do it, but we've already given them.
Can you reassign it?
Well, they've already started doing some work in the job. So
We are in discussions with Water around expanding some of the panels around local contractors and local capacity, especially with the amount of work we know we need to do in the next couple of years. It's going to be a critical thing. And it's a piece of work that we're still.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is that it's a short-term problem to do with the sequencing of that series of work. So it's not a wider issue, I don't think. If that helps.
I think Ewan's just answered that with regards to looking at that provider panel, but certainly I think I've raised it before, the ability and ease for local contractors to get onto that procurement panel seems to work very slowly. And it'd be really good to make sure that there are no barriers to entry for local contractors to enable to stop the requirement for Wellington contractors to come over the hill to do our work.
I think as well as a couple of dynamics there in terms of the standards that we're looking for and making sure that we are doing our own market development to help local contractors meet those levels as much as anything, and actually able to demonstrate that they're reaching those levels. I think actually market development is probably the biggest thing that we need to do.
I mean, if it's a certification for health and safety, then we'll run a workshop or a system to get the paperwork over that line, because sometimes that can be quite imposing for a smaller firm that has the capability, but the required paperwork may be a barrier. So we'll help if we can. But I think that's a good way of making sure that we're not neglecting some of our local contractors.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of that, the Martinborough wastewater treatment, that is a local contractor. So,
I'm looking at what are we, a 5-month waiting list for connections to sewers because of the lack of qualified. There's only one qualified local contractor for sewage connection. I'm picking a number out of here, but it's not as mentioned. So we want to be able to get over that.
Yeah, well, we're in a tender process. And there's one company that made that threshold, and there was a piece of work to try and develop those local suppliers so we can to revise that in the future. But yeah, it's on the radar.
Cool. I guess where Alistair was coming from too, with all this money going to district council's water in the future, try to use by date, are we going to have trouble with, qualified people to do it?
Yep.
I mean, every council's going to be faced with this issue.
Yeah, it's a national problem. I mean, we're aware of it, and we're looking at options to, to train people and bring people in mind quicker.
It's also parts as well. It's also specialist parts as well. So, we know what we're going to do with this tranche of money that we have to spend by. Are we already starting to place orders? Because I'm assuming it's going to be a waiting list for, we're one of 70 councils or whatever that's going to be doing exactly the same thing. Have we put our orders in for these parts that may well have a long lead time?
Yeah, I mean, where we can, we will. But I mean, we have to do the diligence around the design and everything else needed for these projects before we can order anything. So that's,
But we know there's on every.
I can probably add a little bit to that if you want. I manage the CapEx, the CCP. So I decided to turn the camera on. So we are doing a lot of work with the CapEx panel to grow their capabilities over the hill in South Wairarapa. So we're getting some good feedback. It's actually coming in this morning about working with the local contractors to increase their availability and capacity and capability. And on the components and parts, we do actually have a couple of our contractors starting to stockpile components for the next year ahead. That's to deal with the increase in spending and also deal with the impact of COVID-19 on the supply chain. So we'll probably be able to put a paper together sort of early next year about what the contractor capability is over in South Wairarapa, as the contractor panel have been instructed to make those agreements with the local teams rather than having us come in and sort of force it on them, and they are working through it now.
Thanks, Mark.
Cool.
You were happy with that, Alistair? Yep. I am.
thanks.
Well, we have Wellington Water here and we aren't going to see them until next year.
They're probably very good with that.
Very happy with that.
I'm on your Christmas card list, am I?
I haven't been over here, but it's interesting. Well, we definitely appreciate your input for us too. And so thank you very much for that. And you guys have a good break and we'll move on with our agenda. So, right? Merry Christmas.
Thanks, guys.
Well, now I need someone to move that we've received that, although we've already discussed.
I'll move it, GB.
A voice from the wilderness. No, let's just think of it. So, right, moving on, we go land transport.
I guess there's a couple of more comments. Obviously, this is a further update on the work that's been undertaken, and that's also reflected in the dashboards later on in the piece. Again, Tim's here, so not any specifics, I guess. There's also a few pictures there around some of the washouts and some of the issues that were faced through spring and some of the heavier rains, which have also been reacted to and fixed. Yeah, were there any questions around the moving aspect?
Yeah, well, I found that interesting when I read that in conjunction with the the 124 pages, and the one that just the 7 bridges. Tim, I've got a comment that we've got 7 bridges inspected here acceptable, but in the report there was a lot of bridges that were suspect, wasn't there, in the district?
3 poor, 1 very poor.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good ratio actually. If you look at it.
When you say poor, what is that? What is
I'm
that?
not sure.
What's the?
Can I comment on that? Yeah. 7 bridges is just a casual
Snapshot of it.
Yeah, fishing on the surface and even blocking the waterway. Yeah. We've got WSP doing engineer and principal inspections on the bridges at the moment in terms of NZTA's site program. So we're doing general inspections, which is looking underneath it with drones and whatever else, done every 2 years, and principal engineer inspections, far more detailed, every 6 years. And that's where those figures come out of. an asset management plan, those more detailed inspections.
When you write in that report, poor or thing, what does that actually mean? Does that mean it's likely to fail, or how would you define poor? How would you define poor?
Poor is when you're starting to get concrete's falling, rust on your steel structures, damage around your piers with your increased water flow through your waterways, stream degrading and regrading.
Is there a time frame that Paul would say you've got to repair this within a certain time frame, or?
We're using this 3 years under the new LTP to really, as an investigation period, to firm up long-term renewals on the bridges, and also assessing them in terms of capacity for 50 max vehicles. So the whole 3 years coming up is a period of investigation and detailed program going forward without any major spend on structural renewals. Just maintaining what we've got.
I've got a question around that as well, actually. It's just in the context of how does that rating of poor relate to risk in terms of bridge failure or increased axle weights with vehicles that might actually be crossing those bridges as well? Do we, firstly, is that an issue? And then secondly, what liabilities do we have around that?
I would hope that
So can I answer, I'll answer that one. There's a general access vehicle that's permitted to go on a network anywhere. It used to be 44 tonne. And it was lifted under the vehicle mass dimension rule to 45.5, which included a regulatory assessment of bridge stock at the time. So there's anything above that requires a specific permit to go on a particular road, and usually the limitation on the local road network or the state highway network is the bridges. The vehicle that Tim referred to, the 50 max vehicle, is a pro forma design vehicle that can carry up to 50 tonnes, but has equalised axle spacings. So it's 23 metres long, and it has 5 axles on the back and 4 on the front, 9 axles. And the intention and the design is that the equalised axle spacing means the impact on that 50 tonne vehicle is the same as a 44 tonne vehicle. So there's no extra loading from the 50 tonne vehicle. Most of the heavy vehicle fleet in New Zealand, proportionally, is that 50 tonne to 44 tonne. So we virtually don't have any vehicles of higher mass than 50 tonne going around our area.
not without permits.
No.
But basically, we probably issue probably 10 to 15 permits a month for overweight vehicles running around our network. We also approve permits for entry our network via the RBZK network. And those routes are pretty specific. There's not many variants from people. We've been heavy fertiliser vehicles and going to Featherston and to Ravensdown. Stock trucks are getting bigger.
They are.
And it's encouraged of heavy machinery around for mainly logging operations. And if they've got across one of those bridges which is restricted, they generally unload, walk the machinery across and then reload again. Well, they're supposed to. They do, and it comes to people again. They are finding it a bit more restricted with how they move. And I think the whole industry where your plant is getting bigger, it's going to become more and more to the fore.
I'm just trying to understand what risk that places us in as a local authority. If we've got a number of bridges that are rated as poor, does that place us at greater risk, and what additional priority should we be putting towards those? That's all.
I think there's poor and then there's end of your life. And they are monitored through these general inspections every 2 years to monitor deterioration. And it's not great deterioration at the moment in terms of dollars, but to improve the standard, there is a dollar outlay to improve the concrete, particularly reinforcing paint the steel beams. We're painting 2 bridge beams in the new year out of Tora Farm. Clean out there, that's not too bad, it's $100,000 worth of work there.
Okay,
In terms of health and safety and environmental management, painting the end of it.
cool. Thank you.
Can I ask one other question? It's not here, but Donald Creek and the continual flooding.
Yeah, it's been discussed back to, I discussed that this morning and I discussed it further with Wayne Donald from Greater Wellington yesterday, and so there's a plan in place to resolve that.
So could you let us know what that plan replaces?
Yeah. Once we agree it with GW, we will, yeah.
GW will do it.
Once it's agreed.
They have produced scheme plan and they are going to subsidize through some of the schemes, but the bulk cost is for us. And I find that frustrating.
Yeah. Why?
And the broker.
So why is the cost on us?
So that from a Greater Wellington do works generally in areas which they rate for flood protection works. So in-stream works, grading, all those types of things. Areas where they don't have a flood protection, don't have a flood protection scheme, there's no legal obligation on them to do any works at all. So it's a goodwill thing or something they plan to do.
This was discussed at the Greater Valley scheme as well, because the feeling was that part of that water was actually going into the lake, so therefore it was involved part of the Greater Valley. No?
The key is their mandate. It's not to do with the environmental responsibility. It's to do with their local government act responsibility, RMA responsibilities to do with flood protection. And so they will do works in areas where they rate for works, but there's no legal obligation on them to do any works.
So how do they then decide, oh, we'll rate for this bit of flood protection, but we won't for that? If they're responsible for water and waterways, surely they are responsible for this.
But that's my point. So flood protection is a local government act accountability for the regional council, not an RMA responsibility. So they're not responsible for flood, full stop, in waterways. It's only when it's specifically rated.
So you'd have to create a new scheme to rate to the impacts.
So what's the problem then with us just getting a digger and digging this stuff out?
We need consent from the regional council under its own to do works in the water.
And are they putting up obstacles to this? Because
That's the cost.
No, they don't.
it doesn't cost them anything. They'd say, yes, go and do
Costs
it.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that, but this has been going on for a long, long time. So why is it going on?
Part of the discussion around what consent will use to do the work.
What's aggravated at the moment is the rain that we in Featherston 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
Scarred all the catchments. And now they haven't been integrated, so like runs. Negative is migrating down. Down the streams, and this happens to be from where Donald's Creek, it's Adams Creek, back up, it's starting to back up and under the freshwater management, and we can dig out either side of the bridge, but it's a progress exercise because it's going to fall back in again.
So how long is it going to take to resolve this situation?
They're talking early new year because couldn't go in there earlier because of the environmental issues with regard to fish species and whatever else. it's just part of any resource consent you've got to take into account. All the impacts on the environment and everything else. And if we're trying to get some subsidy out of them, I think making an extra month or two is financially beneficial.
Okay, so we'll see this resolved before next winter.
Oh, yeah. Well, done for that, like, here it is.
Be careful, because remember, this is exactly what Tim was saying, so rivers want to get natural equilibrium, right? So you get a storm event and it pushes gravel into a river and it migrates down. So you go and dig out this bit, then all comes down.
Well aware of that.
So, you know,
Got a bit of knowledge on that.
which is why you have a protection scheme, otherwise you're always in the river trying to do that with control, right? And so just simply going in and fixing the problem today, guarantee in 2 years' time you have the same problem again.
So this is,
You can't use the road, that's the problem.
so this is flooding, which actual road is it?
It's flooding Longwood West. You can't drive down Longwood West because it's water.
I drove down there yesterday.
In the water.
So, so if you wanted to progress this, what you would be doing is submitting to Greater Wellington Regional Council's long-term plan to request consideration of a flood scheme in Woodview.
Have we done that?
Placing mechanism under it.
Have we done that?
This is what we do here. Yeah, we put an action item.
Okay. So if that's the logical conclusion, should we be doing that?
Well, again, your risk, what you should be doing is having to think about the whole district and where you want to make sure not just one creek or one pond. So, you know, if you're going to have a shot at the River Alliance and be racing, you want to know where it's racing currently, where it isn't, or where our problems are, and go with the comprehensive plan. And there's no way in Hades we get trying to do that for February, March. You wanted to. I mean, you want to do that, we'll do that, but I'm just saying.
No, but
Yeah.
well, so what's your solution to this? Because we can't have this keep coming up all the time.
Well, the solution is the scheme for improvements. At the moment, I've got a sketch to it, but I can send you all. Hopefully done in the new year. We're still working through who's paying for what, and the bulk is going to come to the district council's way. So be aware of that. I sent the land management office back to talk to the local contractors to see whether they want to help extract gravel out of there at no cost. So they're talking to Peter Warren and others at the moment, try and speed that process up as well. I think we all know that it's at a premium at the moment. So we got abundance and a stretch of creek for 3 or 4K.
And they're not letting us take it out.
Not going to see.
Harry, you mentioned an action. Can we be a little bit clear on what we want with this? Do you think we should have it as an action list and go to the GW to see if we can resolve it long term?
I think what we should do is actually have a workshop with GWRC about February, where you just understand what all these things at play are for them to understand their perspective on this. Because I can guarantee you the one thing that's going to happen under the freshwater standards, all those types of things, is the ability to do works in waterways is only going to get harder, if not impossible.
Can we organise that?
Yeah, there's an action.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, it's get all the information, understand from their perspective how this works, what their RMA responsibilities are, what their local government responsibilities, how the infra protection systems are funded, how they work. But then the RMA stuff around what's happening in the NES is the obvious things and all of that.
Okay.
And then when you understand, then give us some guidance on what it is you're wanting us to actually do.
Yeah, no, I've got that noted. We'll operate on that. Right, now we'll talk about the Cape Palliser Road when we get to that in a minute. So is there any other?
I guess just,
queries?
so I just wanted to say that there was the dashboard was slightly separate saying that the overall program's on track. The recent programs we've done, I believe, Ruakaka Platoon is going to be finished by Christmas. Tim?
Yeah.
Okay. Was a slightly leading question.
You didn't say which Christmas.
That's 3 kilometres of roading, or is it?
I guess the point.
Or thereabouts?
It's Ellie Holmes' place.
Ellie Holmes' place.
Yeah.
How many k's is it?
1.5, roughly.
Yeah.
Through the one, but that's right, mate.
To be fair, the reason why it's being done now, not when it should have been, was because of COVID, so.
Yeah.
And winter.
And they understand that the residents, they weren't happy, but they do understand it, so. Okay, moving on. Is there any queries around the amenities and
I guess just
parks and reserves?
a quick statement from me, just the volume of work that's going on, not just in Washington Loading, but in particular in amenities as well, especially with some of the PGF funding and PGF projects that have been progressed through that. It's a substantial amount of work being done by Bryson. So it's great to see the progress and meeting some of the timeframes around it. And especially getting the swimming pools open as well.
Yeah.
It's obviously been handy for start of school holidays and stuff as well. So we've got some really positive feedback from the public around the opening of those. And will be, I believe, more in June uptake for those as well.
Just on the Plain Farm, being a farmer myself, I must admit it's looking pretty good. The people that are leasing the farm are actually doing a darn good job on it. You know, it doesn't look untidy, it's well farmed, so whoever it is, they're doing a good job.
Yeah, so I had a meeting with him a couple of days ago. He's not a well man, so I'll keep him with a comment on that. Right, okay.
Sorry, I'm just saying, there shouldn't be a comment about the individual.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Dave. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look, several people have mentioned how well the Plain Farm looks in their entrance way, and a few people that have been to the house and have a look. So,
Yeah.
very good.
And also Pam for arranging the sign.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah, looks really good.
Thank you, Pam, yeah. No, very good.
Pass that on to Ted. Thank you.
It looks like it's loved and well kept. That is, I guess, what everyone wants. So thanks for that, Bryce. That's great.
Yeah. As well, I visited all the swimming pools, checked them out. Everything's looking fantastic there too. So yeah, full credit.
Didn't take your clothes off.
Well, not all.
You're arrested, mate.
Only if you're free.
GP. Chair, could I just say I'd like to pass on congratulations to Bryce and his team, because the amount of work they've done in the amenities side of things, it is just outstanding, and it's so lovely to see in all our parks and reserves, playgrounds, and the pensioner flats and things. It's just lovely. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Bryce. And to be add to that, you know, I guess we haven't had a lot of complaints about our reserved areas, so that's means that people are checking.
Compliments.
Their compliments, so that's great. Yeah. Rebecca, have you any questions or queries or?
Actually, I wanted to also thank Bryce as well for giving me an individual amenities tour, which was really helpful for me to understand, because I'd missed most of them and then couldn't get to them. So thank you very much, Bryce, for taking the time to explain some of our more interesting sites. I appreciated that. And I did convey to Bryce recently that when I was heading past the new exercise equipment that's been installed in Collier Park, that it was being used. And most times when I've driven past, well, not me driving at the moment, as you know, but most times when I've been driven past, it's been in use, which has been really encouraging to see. So good feedback from the community in that regard.
So Bryce, Full Tiles, obviously, we had that incident.
Yeah.
No other likely.
Well, we've gone through, Munborough and Featherston had the same type of tile, so we've gone through and checked them all. The Billy, it's just a one-off thing. It may have been correct, we just don't know. It never actually came off its snap. So we are monitoring it. It's something we'll look at. We've instructed our CLN contractors to engage the swimmers that they must come out of the pool by the ladders that are supplied. And we'll look at replacing those tiles next year, next season. But we have gone around and physically checked all the tiles.
And I had a lady came up to me the other day to thank us for the stairs.
Yeah.
Great, yeah. So
On social media about those.
positive. Yeah, which is great. Alex, did you contact the family of the individual who was injured? Alex?
Sorry?
Did you?
No, because I got the contact was via the school and the school was closed. But I'm sure I'll just have to ring.
We have tried to contact the family, but the schools like.
Rebecca, you.
Yeah, I do. Apologies, councillors. I need to leave this meeting now, and I hope to catch up with you all tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, see you.
Righto, I think we've pretty well nailed the C1 report section. We just take a 5 or 10 minute toilet break and we'll get back with the Cape Palliser Road Reserve report. Hopefully I'll get my voice back. My dogs, their ears are painted on to a finger yellow.
I've got to go and get you a coffee.
Indeed.
When I get the coffee.
Soy mocha chai latte.
Harry's gone.
Righto, guys, I think we'll rock back into it. Time is on there. So,
One of the aspects that didn't quite make it into the partnerships operation report was the library book sale, which happened on Saturday and coinciding with the Christmas parade. Not any figures or feedback yet, but there was quite a strong attendance, lots of people there. And the library staff across all 4 libraries and also Masters as well did an excellent job of pulling that together. Yeah, I'll get back to this outcome around that, but it was a really well attended event and it was very successful and guys put in lots of effort. So
Yeah, very well successful. I walked in there and there were people all over the place. Man. The books were really good.
I now need a second house to fill the books. Fill the books in.
righto, moving on, thanks, Ewan. Would someone like to move that we receive the Cape Palliser Road Coastal Erosion Report? Right.
Why is it complicated? What is it complicated?
Right, that's the report. The report.
I've seen that.
Where does it say?
Is it not public?
Where does it say?
But it's public now.
It's public,
It's public.
yeah, it's out and about, I'll tell you. So, right, we, at this stage, we don't need to do a recommendation to do it. We'll discuss the report. And
Yes, a piece of work that's also been going on for some time and has been mentioned in the previous Assets and Services Committee. So now we've got the final report, which is there and make sure it's even bigger. So there's lots of areas of concern there, and some of the findings are identified a couple of sites that were further monitoring is required. And I believe submitting a funding application to work today for funding to conduct that further assessment. Is there any, unfortunately, are there any other particular questions or comments to make? We've got Tim here again, so yeah.
I guess some of the big questions concerning a lot of the residents out there is what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? The fact that when you read the report, there's no easy answer, is there? I mean, it has been discussed, and Alice discussed it with me earlier on, about an alternative, but we found in the report done in the 1980s that it's unaffordable and it's not going to stop a lot of the issues. Is that fair comment?
Yeah, I think the 1980 report from Beckers touched on overland route. We appreciate just the summary. Rona, you've got major earthworks, you've got Maryland, you've got bridges, you've got waterways. It's probably the same sort of scope. Vanuatu Gorge, really. And since then, that report was parked by the council back in the time, and hasn't gone anywhere.
Can I ask you a question on that, Tim? You know, this is a very comprehensive report that's been submitted now. You know, in terms of ongoing costs, like there's just going to be, we're just going to keep pouring more and more money into this for years and years and years. We're never going to win this. At what stage do we say, well, we've done enough, and the relative merits of continuing to pour money into this as opposed to digging out the old report and looking at an alternative? Where's the balance here that we say, like the Vanuatu Gorge, at what stage do you just say, we can't win this?
Well, I suppose at the moment is all works are funded 100% by Kotahi. And that subsidy is going to reduce back over the next 3 years. Those discussions were had probably 3 years ago, and this council put a paper up to the NZTA board at the time, trying to convince them to cap the council's financial risk on that road. And that was received quite favourably. I'm not sure whether it got to the board or not, but got discussions around that. So I suppose as part of the subsidy rollback, we just don't accept it as a fait accompli. There is room for negotiation and discussions going forward. And I think this report is, we've done it here. You've got to remember we've got coastlines on the eastern coast through Waiparoa and Tora. And there's a lot of district councils in New Zealand facing the same problems with many coastal roads. We're slightly different at the moment where this is 100% subsidised. So at the moment, we're different to other councils who don't have full subsidy on their local roads.
How much is a subsidy?
100%.
Dollar-wise?
It depends on the works. It depends on the works stream, does it?
An average?
I think their operational budget is probably $500,000, plus we get a chunk of emergency works every second year, which falls somewhere between $600,000 and $1 million.
I guess, you know, I mean, we've discussed this earlier on with the creation of these new plots, and they're going to be in place this year.
This is the artificial reef.
Yeah. And when you see some of the other artificial reefs around New Zealand, people saying it's working well, but time's only going to tell that. But it's not as though we're sitting back doing nothing. And if you read that report, even at the toe of the Johnson's Hill, if there was some protection, it would actually help it. We don't know that until we try. So if these plots tend to work with the high pressure is around Turners Bay at our place and over at Buckley's, and we'll get an indication of whether that makes sense. But you know, if they're talking sea level rise and all the rest of it, our road's going to be unabated. Boy, that little Johnson's Hill is not going to end.
And that's my point. At what stage do we say, you know, throwing good money after bad and we need to have alternative?
I think that would be a discussion when we're starting to have to fund that road from ratepayers' funds. That's when we face that crunch. But there's still a long way yet to go from the 6 mayors who currently have roads of special significance.
Yeah, so just let me start back. So the reason the NZTA funds that road is not because it's impossible for us to fund.
That's the fishing village.
It's what we call a special purpose road. And special purpose roads are put in place all around New Zealand for different reasons. Some of them were access to national parks, some of them were access to lighthouses, railways, all sorts of things. So there's a multitude of special purpose roads that are the same issue here. So it's the cost, the basic problem is the cost of that part of the network to a small territorial to fund. That's the problem we have. But the reason that is to preserve iconic places in New Zealand. So there's still, I think, literally a lot of water to go under the bridge, literally to talk to NZTA about the solutions for these kind of roads. You've got places like Wairoa, Whakatane, the whole road into Lake Waikaremoana and all the way up the other side from Okurua, down the other side to Wairoa is a special purpose road. The ability of Wairoa's council funding half of that is almost impossible and to maintain. So this is it's a national scale problem of which we are part. But the key reason those roads are put in there, so the reason NZTA funds them, is because they are of special significance as opposed to just a piece of the network that's hard to actually cost. Right? So that's the argument that's key, which there's the rule, which is the clarifying. Decision was to at the time, and it's a policy decision of the board, it's not a minister decision. And the board had its own volition to change flow rates. Hence the adjustment just recently. So constantly the trick is to get joined up with the government about the special purpose roads, so we're not just one voice in the wilderness. That's the trick. And that conversation is very much going on.
Yep. I mean, it was interesting, someone I talked about this 100 years ago, that NZTA came out for a visit and they had a look at the issue, particularly the road from Maui to Mangatoi. And they seen the problem, seen the issue there. And then once they come about April, following year, they decided to.
Oh, we asked.
Oh, of course we asked.
And remember the NZTA board turns over.
Yeah.
And it does regulate the government's policy changes. So and that's the beauty of this, is it is a board decision. It's not governed by the GPs, it's not governed by any of the land transport management stuff, but how the fire rate is set and what's spent on is an NZTA board decision.
And I also like to take your attention back 25 years ago when all of us with batches out at now we were expecting the road to close.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and there was and it keeps staying open, and we do what we need to do, and there's still access. And I'd say the access out there is much better than it was 25 years ago.
Oh, hell yes.
You know, with the bridges, and there's no need for a GMC 4x4 sitting at one side of the entrance to no. So I mean, while there are issues, we're still maintaining the road and keeping it open, which is great.
And we haven't got it on our own, as Harry's just indicated. You know, there are other areas in New Zealand that are
Many areas.
When's the artificial reef going in?
This summer.
I think February, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've got to do a couple of environmental impact reports to the regional council, then we can go.
Very good. Any other discussion around the Cape Palliser Road? No? What happened? I'll tell you what, great photos that drone takes. I've got a drone, but it's actually took itself into a hill the other day.
That's actually not the drone's fault. I think that's the
My
operator here.
granddaughter's called me the drone, and after that I can tell you, and other things. Right, we need someone to move that we note the funding application being submitted to Whakatane for further work to be completed. All in favour of it? Right, we are moving on to action report, and I'll jump the gun here and move that we receive the action report. You happy with that, Suzanne? Someone like to move that? I second that. I'll second. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Eric. Supporting you. Right. Actions.
Yep, there are a few there that are on the policy review schedule, so we might look to close those out as long as we get them into the policy schedule rather than having them.
How are we going with item 39, the scheduled maintenance works for senior housing? Are we still on track with funding and implementation?
Yeah, it's all on track. Unfortunately, I didn't have a full plan there just because of the workload in that team, but we'll put together a schedule for the next year and also put together an asset management plan across all our amenities as well, and that's going to be part of that process as well. So we have to have a longer term maintenance schedule as well.
I'm currently visiting every single pensioner flat around the district.
Yes, maybe looking for a place to live in.
Yes. My wife. It's called Come Planet.
Right.
Sorry, can I just ask on the Featherston Walmer related, that's quite nice if that could happen.
Which one?
The lighting.
Yeah.
What number?
Maybe it's not historic.
591.
We had, that's just we had to remove that as an earthquake risk part. We are looking at alternatives as to how we provide lighting in the area.
I think that's in that earlier report card where they had to remove it with the earthquake.
Oh, sorry, yeah, that's in the dashboard.
Yeah. But I mean, with solar light options now, I'm sure that we actually probably don't need to connect to the main.
And that's what we've done, or I'm sure we've done or doing in Stellargo Park in Greytown, something very similar. So that we get it.
It's nice that lighting to go to Stellargo Park.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
What are you doing out at night like that?
Keep an eye
If you talk to people, they'll say it's dangerous at Great.
Can't be dangerous.
It can be dangerous.
So you are going to go through and close a few of these up?
I will just confirm that they're on the city policy review schedule, and we'll do that before we.
That actual report's looking pretty good.
Yeah. And I guess after today's discussion, we've got a couple more to go on there next time. But it's nothing we can't handle. Okay. Okay. Well, if we're all happy with that.
So there was just one that was mentioned, the review of speed limits. Is that going to come to the?
Yeah, so we're in the process of engaging resources to do that for both ourselves and Carson. We'll be doing it together, and we'll be sending the plan as part of the next assets and services.
Okay, guys, thank you for your attendance. Thank you, Tim and the others. But anyway, thanks, guys. Very good.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks.
That was painless.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks.